I'm Justin Davis, and this is Drone Camps RC. Foxeer Falkor, is it the world's best new FPV cam? Let's find out. Okay guys, so to honestly appreciate where we're at today in 2018, in August 2018 for image quality on our FPV cameras, let's go ahead and take a trip back to like 2014. Show you what the quality looked like back then, and then fast forward to 2018 for the Foxeer Falkor. Now, Foxeer is not really labeling this one as a race camera. They're mostly labeling this as something to fly for your freestyle quads if you want the best image quality for seeing what you're doing during your freestyle maneuvers, as well as long range applications. So this on an FPV wing or something like that would be amazing. And you're not gonna really notice a whole lot of latency with this particular camera if you're flying freestyle or flying long range. Now with that said, if you're wanting to fly something that has a really nice image quality and has a really low latency, under 5 milliseconds, I would probably do something like the Predator Micro version 3 right here that I have, or the Predator Mini. Both of these cameras are under 5 milliseconds and are extremely fast. Now the Falkor is coming in around 21 milliseconds as tested by a friend of mine, and it does seem to be one of the best looking image resolutions and picture quality that I've seen so far this summer. And I think so far this one at 1200 TVL with the G-WDR, it has a really nice color saturation and image variation between the lights and the darks and the shadows. It is also switchable between 4:3 and 16:9, so a lot of freestyle guys like to fly the 16:9, which I do. I love that. I like the wide view, and other people want the 4:3 for racing, but again, I'm not really going to recommend this camera for racers. Now, if we look on the back of this camera, it does have a few different wiring options on the back. It's kind of going back to the original idea of having that little controller that plugs in on the far right. And I was never really a huge fan of those, but they work. And I hate to have it on there permanently, sort of hot glued on the side of the quad. And that's what you really have to do with the wire coming off here. Sort of hot glue it down on the edge of your quad so you can access it later for changing up your different scene settings or color, brightness, contrast, and any of your OSD. If you want to take that on or off the screen, you have to use that little cable. So this one particularly doesn't have camera control. I would love it if the Falkor had some type of camera control. That way we could set that up in Betaflight and do it with our sticks. So you can see first up on the left, all the way over here, we have that's the power in right there. We have ground, video, and we have the little tiny word there. It's VSEN, and that is your voltage sensor right there. So you're gonna run that cable out to where your VBAT is, and then you can tell what kind of voltage you have coming from your battery terminals. And over on the far right hand side right there, you have where your little joystick plugs into. So you can access that by the cable and on the side of your quad. And the input voltage range on this guy is actually fairly large. It's from 5 to 40 volts, so plenty of room for powering this one. Now, if we look at the very side of this camera, check that out. There seems to be 3 different mounting points on there, but the very top one doesn't seem to be threaded. If you can see, there's no threading inside that hole right there, and it's the same on the other side. So if I was to drive a screw in that, hopefully that works. And on this bottom part right here, it does look like there is a hole, but there is a metal threaded point in the very center point. So I'm very curious to see if this top part of this mount is actually going to work. But the lens on this camera looks great. It is adjustable by the O-ring just behind it there. You can move it in and out to focus it. And it is a 2.5 millimeter lens, and they do have replacements for this one. So a very, very nice looking lens on this camera. And this camera is all about image quality, so they put a really nice lens on here for you. And this 2.5 millimeter lens has a field of view on the horizontal axis at 110 degrees and a field of view on the diagonal axis of 140 degrees. If you decide to get the 1.8 millimeter lens, you're going to have a horizontal of 125 degrees and you're going to have the diagonal view of 160 degrees. And this baby, like a lot of cameras, is switchable between PAL and NTSCs. And PAL has 50 frames per second and NTSC has up to 60 frames per second. And the measurement from side to side, from mounting point to mounting point, is a standard 28 millimeters wide, so 25.6 high. And on the side here, you're going to have to use those M2 screws that are included in the pack. And also, guys, inside here it is a CMOS 1/3 sensor. And some of the stuff you guys get inside the box here is the little instruction manual right here. And if I open this up a little bit, you can see it says Falkor Micro next to where it says Falkor. So I'm hoping that they're going to release the Micro pretty soon, and I can show that one to you guys as well. I'm expecting that that will be pretty sweet for freestyle quads as well. It also has information in here about accessing the main menu, which is pretty easy to do with that little controller that comes along with it. If you want to get into your menus, this is the controller. Just like a lot of the other FPV cameras out there that have little joystick controllers, it has accessing the main menu in the very middle right here, up, down, left, and right. And you should be able to get into changing your OSD by pressing up on that top button. Just holding that momentarily should put you into the OSD menu to move things around or take things on or off the screen. And you also get some hardware in there for mounting your camera to your quad. This is M2 hardware, and a few little washers in there, which I find totally useful sometimes. And you do get 2 harnesses in here, so if you break one or something happens and you don't feel like soldering it back together, they give you an extra one in the box, which I think is nice. And they give you that hard mounting, aluminum mounting frame, so if you decide to put this on a quad that doesn't have side mount, you can do that option as well. So let's go ahead and take this camera and put it on a quad. We'll take it outside and I'll show you what you can expect for around $39. It seems to be a pretty nice camera. As far as race quality camera, I'm not sure if it's really going to replace your favorite Predator version 2 and 3, but we'll see how the Falkor does out in the field. I think you'll like the image quality, and I think you'll be pretty impressed with it. So let's go ahead and play some of that video now, and I'll talk about this camera out in the field.
Falkor, Falkor, wake up, let's go for a ride, Falkor.
Justin, have patience, boy. We will go soon enough, and we will be off on our journey.
Man, that was like one of my favorite movies of all time, The Never-Ending Story. I loved Falkor. Who didn't love Falkor? And they named this camera after Falkor, one of the most awesome characters in that movie. Probably the most lovable character, a dog dragon that flies through the air. And, you know, this is a lovable camera as well. I'm seeing something here in my goggles that's quite a bit different than what I see in the DVR. The DVR is not going to be quite as high resolution output as what I see in my, say, Fatsharks, for example. It's just going to be a little bit better image quality. So expect that if you have goggles that aren't quite as good as 1000 TVL, it's going to not quite as give you the full image quality of this camera. So my first impression of this camera was that it is definitely worth the money for someone who wants a ultimate freestyle camera. In a way, this might be more of a favorite of mine than something like the original Monster Cam and the V2 that came out. This one does look better than both of those in my opinion. The colors are great, and all the color saturation on here looks great. The lightness and darkness underneath the trees looked great, and at around 21 milliseconds latency, I really honestly can't complain too much. So I think you've got a pretty nice freestyle or long range camera here. So I appreciate you guys watching my reviews as always. I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next one.